You introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is GennaRose Nethercott, and we're in Cambridge right now, but I live in Somerville, Massachusetts.
Cool.
I'm from Vermont.
Can you talk about poems to order?
Yeah, so basically I write poems to order on the street, as well as at like parties and functions and events and things for hire. And what I do is I have a little table that folds up and fits in my backpack, but then has basically it's a little pop-up booth with a table and like a little lace tablecloth and a 1952 Hermes rocket typewriter. And I basically set up there and passersby give me a topic. I write a poem about their topic on the spot, hand the poem off after reading it aloud to them, and I give away the only existing copy. I very rarely save copies for myself, and then the folks just donate whatever they feel like it merits once they've listened to the poem.
Great. And what was the initial motivation, or how did you come up with the idea to start?
I started doing it, I guess just after college because I wanted to travel. Well, actually, originally I started doing it because I was like selling handmade chapbooks on the street when I was like 19, and then I started doing that in addition, and people were way more interested in the poems to order than in my like Xerox chapbooks I'd made. So I was like, okay, maybe I should err towards that.
Okay.
And then I wanted to travel after college, and so but I didn't play like a buskable instrument that I could like pay my way with, and so I sort of figured out what my own version of that would be, which was this. And like I've seen similar things to it. I'm not the only person that writes poems to order. There are a number of people, pretty much at least one person in every major city.
Who does it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I know a number of different people. I know like folks in Austin, Texas, folks in a group in Chicago, people in New Orleans, and like all about San Francisco maybe. Yeah, there's people all over the place.
Do you know them personally?
All those ones I know, but I don't know everybody personally.
Cool. But there is like a network of these poets.
Kind of, just in that like, yeah, I've like collaborated with all those different groups and
Wow,
folks,
that's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of them I've met through poems to order and just being like, oh, you do this weird thing, and I do this weird thing too.
That's great. But it's meeting in person, really. There's no other way that you could really find these people without.
Well, or I mean, you can like Google poems to order. Like, there's definitely people I've found out about just like Googling myself.
Really?
And then finding like, oh, these people are doing similar work that I'm doing.
Oh, interesting.
For the most part, yeah, we meet in person, or like we'll hear about each other and then reach out if we're in each other's cities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. And kind of going back to the chapbook issue versus the single poems, what do you think is the interest factor in the one-off sort of poems versus the full
Well, I think what was appealing was that it was on the spot and it was like
spontaneous,
personal.
Yeah.
So the poems that I'm giving to people are like specifically for them and only for them, and they're conjured based on something that is meaningful to them.
Right.
So rather, it doesn't even fully feel like my poetry. It feels more like a collaboration, and I think of it as more of a collaboration.
Okay.
Like I write very differently when I'm writing poems to order versus when I'm writing my own work. Just because in my head they're very different things. And I like to think of writing poems to order as very similar to like reading someone's tarot. It's sort of like an intuitive / divinatory act in a way, where it's essentially attempting to like hold a mirror up to somebody and like show them what it is they already know. Because since they give me the topic, it's something that they already have associations to, and so I have to try and like identify what those associations are and write the poem in a way where it's like archetypal enough that they can see themselves in it, but concrete enough that it like has meaning and specificity.
Right. And over the 5 or so years you've been doing it, you've come to know what the balance is between the archetypal and the concrete?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That's
always
awesome.
a work in progress.
Yeah,
but,
sure. That's really cool. And okay, so you said there are two different things in your mind when you're writing for yourself, when you're writing poems to order. Could you talk a little bit more about that, how you're envisioning the two?
Well, I guess when I'm writing for myself, I don't have to please anybody.
Right.
So it's just like a very different set of requirements. But that's not to say that like I only write happy poems when I'm writing poems to order. but I guess they sort of serve different functions.
Yeah.
Where when I'm writing a poem to order, it's specifically to like fill a purpose in this specific person's life.
Right.
And when I'm writing my own work, it's to like explore things that I personally feel need to explore,
Sure.
as opposed to something someone else feels the need to explore.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think that the commercial aspect of poems to order kind of cheapens your art, or
I
not?
think it can,
It can?
depending on what I'm writing,
Yeah.
what the topic is. Like I end up writing a ton of birthday poems,
Oh, yeah.
a ton of poems like about people's pets,
Oh, wow.
stuff like that, which I hate.
Yeah. How
But-
do you make that new?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like, but then I have to remind myself that like those they're still making people happy.
Right.
So like they serve a function, but I don't know if they necessarily serve an artistic function.
Okay.
But then I also get topics that are really interesting and unique, and that do allow me to sort of create something that is closer to art
Yeah.
and less like a Hallmark card, which is always my preference.
Yeah, that's awesome. So have you said you do freelance work, but have you considered any other like commercial writing or
I mean, I've done a little bit of copywriting here and there, but it's just like not
yeah, it's
fun.
yeah.
So,
I think a lot of poets feel that way. I feel that way.
yeah, but I'm really lucky in that I have, like, I've been able to get pretty steady freelance gigs, specifically writing poetry. So, like, my biggest client is I work for an an architectural firm. They're architects and builders in the Cape Cod area, and they design and build these like sort of luxury homes.
Wow.
And they hire me to write poems based on their houses or about their houses, and then they give the poems as a gift to the homeowners, and also use it in their like promotion on social media and publicity.
Wow.
So that's sort of like halfway between commercial and artistic, where it's like it is poetry, and it's like based on someone else's art, which is like the head architect John and his wife Sharon. They like these houses are their art that I'm writing based on their art.
Cool. And that way it's almost like ekphrastic.
Yeah, in a way.
Cool.
And then I actually just finished an ekphrastic piece for an individual, because I also get hired for like individual freelance gigs. And this was like one of my favorite projects I've ever done, which was a painter who makes like abstract work. She has like a wealthy benefactor in Germany who sponsors her work to be produced in art books as well as put up in galleries, and he sponsored me to write a series of 17 poems based on a suite of 17 of her paintings to like be published in that book. And so I was able to basically tell whatever story I wanted to, because they were abstract works.
That's so fun.
So just like losing interest on the paintings.
Sure.
And it was like a pretty large scale project. And-
Yeah.
But that I really enjoyed because it wasn't commercial. It didn't. I wasn't having to like sell a product with it.
Right.
So it freed me up to be able to be a little bit darker, more complex in like the emotional issues that were being reached.
That's awesome. Is that one of the only experiences that you've had that has really allowed you that level of freedom, because it was this sort of like benefactor type relationship?
Well, I think that one was definitely the one that allowed the most, just because it was such a large scale project.
I
too.
see.
So I was able to do like a longer scale narrative. I ended up making it like kind of a cohesive plot line throughout the 17 poems. Which
That's cool. That is like the process of writing it or compiling a chapbook or a manuscript.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's so cool.